Well, back in Canberra, the opposition today released a discussion paper on gambling reform, rejecting the idea of a mandatory pre-commitment scheme for problem pokie players. Tony Abbott says the Labor-backed plan to set limits on poker machine losses will damage clubs and that any scheme to deal with problem gamblers needs to be voluntary. John Stewart reports.
The opposition's discussion paper on gambling reform suggests boosting counselling for problem gamblers and banning odds from being promoted during sports broadcasts.
The punters on TAB Sportsbet have it the other way around.
But Tony Abbott says that forcing pokies players to set limits on how much they are prepared to lose won't work.
The problem with mandatory pre-commitment is that it will be very expensive and very damaging for community clubs, but it isn't going to seriously help the problem gambler.
We are proposing a number of directions, including a scheme of voluntary pre-commitment for all poker machines in Australia.
Independent MP Andrew Wilkie wants players to be forced to set a limit on how much they are prepared to lose when using the high-intensity poker machines, which can take $1,200 an hour from gamblers. And he says a voluntary scheme will not help problem gamblers.
The only people in this country who think voluntary pre-commitment is a good idea is the poker machine industry, because they know in venues with voluntary pre-commitment the cash flow barely changes. In other words, it does nothing for problem gamblers.
The opposition's discussion paper also suggests that staff in pokies venues be trained to identify problem gamblers and raises the possibility of family members being able to help a problem gambler stay away from a gambling venue.
We are looking at a scheme similar to the responsible serving of alcohol for the gambling industry. And in addition to that, we're looking at additional information and counselling for the people who are the problem gamblers.
Can I just say, in terms of the issue of counselling, we know from a report that was released in Canberra just this week that only 10% of problem gamblers actually seek help. That problem gambling counselling services don't reach 90% of the people that need assistance for a whole range of reasons.
The Greens were scathing of the proposals.
This is a document that could have been written by the industry. It is a sop to the industry. It does nothing to deal with problem gambling.
The opposition leader has aligned himself with the club's campaign, which aims to block any mandatory limit on poker machine spending.
I think the issue is to address problem gambling without needlessly damaging our social fabric. Now, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, community clubs are an important part of the social fabric.
Associate Professor Linda Hancock has written a book on the inside workings of Melbourne's Crown Casino and studied the impact of gambling in different countries throughout the world. She says that voluntary pre-commitment would have little impact on problem gamblers using poker machines in Australia.
I actually think it would be very much a business as usual policy measure that had very little effect. When people get in what is called the zone, they actually lose control, and to expect them to exert a rational decision-making set of behaviours and say, oh, well, I've reached my limit, I can gamble, I can play on, but I won't. That just doesn't happen. Because once in the zone, a lot of researchers say that consent is actually vitiated. The capacity for rational decision-making is not there.
The opposition's working group on gambling reform is due to deliver its recommendations early next year. John Stewart, Lateline.